Okay, I wanted to show how to do linear regression when you create an indicator variable or a dummy variable. So how do we do this? Alright, so here is our data set of the miles per gallon that we've been working with. And we last time were able to include all of these variables, right? Excuse me. But now we want to be able to include this origin variable. And this origin variable has three categories: American, Japanese, and European. So we talked in class that if we have three categories, we actually need to make two new variables, right? So m minus 1, the number of new variables. So, and we're going to make American our base case, right? So let's just do that. So we'll call one variable Japanese, one called European. And then we'll create an if statement. So remember, these have to be either zeros or ones. That's the only thing that's allowed in there. And so easy way to do that is just use this if statement, equals if. And remember, the if has sort of three things. First is some kind of test. And if the test comes back true, then you can tell it what value to give. So we're going to make some tests so that if the value is true, we want it to be 1, to return 1. If the logical test is false, we want it to return 0. So that's pretty easy. So all we can do is say, if whatever's in this cell, in the American, equals whatever's in the column heading, then I want it to be 1, otherwise 0. So right now it's 0, so that's good. Now I want to be able to just write this once and then copy it over here, and copy it all the way straight down, all over the place. So there's a couple things I have to do in order to do that. First of all, if I want to be able to move this J1 over, right? So first of all, I could just copy and paste it, right? So let's see what happens if I do that. So if I do that, this part works right, but this part doesn't, right? So this moves over. So I want that to stay right there. So let's delete that. So let's first just fix that one. So how do I do that? I can hit the F4 button, and that will lock it there. So I could do that. So that worked right. The only problem is if I copy down, it stays up there. And I want it to move down too. So that's a problem. So if I go back in here to where I have my I2 and hit F4 again, then it goes to this next phase of sort of locking cells where it only locks the number 2, which is the column. Whoops, screwed that up. Let's see, one more time, F4. So it just puts a dollar sign in front of the number 2, and remember, number 2 is the columns, and there's an I. The I is, sorry, the number 2 is the row, and I is the column. So the columns go up and down, rows go left and right. So that's actually, is that what I want? Let's see. I want it to be able to stay in this column, but I want it to move down. So that's not quite what I want. So let's see if I did that, what would happen? Well, it actually didn't quite work. So it stayed in 2, but it still moved over. So that's not what I want. I want it to stay here, but I want to be able to move it down. Alright? So one more time, let's go back over here. So that's not quite right. So but if I hit F4 again, then I get the dollar sign just on the I instead of the 2, which means it will stay in this column no matter what, but it will be allowed to move down. Okay, so that's actually what I want, because watch, see now, if I do that, it stayed over here in Europe, or in American. But then, yeah, when I copied it over, it did okay. And then I copied it down, it was able to go down. So now we have a new problem though, right? Is that this Japanese, what was up here in the top, it got moved down too, so that's also wrong. So let's work with that one now. So this has the opposite problem. We want it to be able to stay up here, the very first in this I column, or sorry, this one row, row one, but I want it to be allowed to move over to this European. So that I can just write it once here and then paste it and then be done with it. Right, so in order to do that, that's kind of the opposite. I want the dollar sign in front of the ones over here. You know, this first one we wanted the dollar sign in front of the columns, in front of the I. In this case, I want the dollar sign in front of the ones. So now, if I do this, let's just check. Yep, it worked. So it's kept the Japanese up here, and then this got moved over. And then if I copy this and paste it right there, it does the same thing. So it kept American, moves over to European. So pretty much did exactly what I want. So now if I highlight those two and then double click, paste it all the way down. So let's just make sure this is working. So here's the Japanese, looks good. Japanese looks good. Here's Europeans. Those all this will look good. So I'm fairly confident this is working right. Yep, looks good. Oops. Okay, so now let's do the regression. So if you remember when we did this regression and we had a whole bunch of independent variables, we had to they had to be all next to each other. So right now I have this guy in the middle. Right, so these two have to be right next to the year in order for this to work. So how do I gotta move them over? Well, one easy way is to just click on the column itself. So see if I come up here, I get this little down arrow. Click on that, and then if I come over here and I want to get this little crosshairs, that one, whoops, that one. Then if I hold the mouse button down and drag it over, it just moves it over. Right? So that's an easy way. Or, I mean, the other way to do it is to highlight all of it, Control Shift, hit X, Control X, which is cut, and then Control V. So that would also work. Control X is cut as opposed to copy. Cut means it's just going to go away, right? Or well, it copies it and then you can paste it again. So it doesn't delete it, but it copies it in the sense that it will no longer be where it was before. So finally, I want to delete this row so that these guys are right next to each other. So I just click on I, right click, say delete, and then it just sucks it in. So that's just the way I want it. All right. So make sure this looks good. Looks good. Alright, so then let's go ahead and make this, do the regression. So data analysis, regression. So I think this is still set up from the last time I did it, so it's probably right. So here's our Y's, miles per gallon. Now our X's are not quite right because we want to include the Japanese and European variables. So all those, Control Shift down, highlights everything. Labels, confidence intervals, let's put it right here. Let's turn the residuals off for now, and then click OK. Okay. So here's what we got, and so I'm pretty sure this is what was showing up in the notes. I'm hoping. Looks right. So I wanted to show also one thing. So if we wanted to do a prediction, and so I made up some numbers here. We'll just make some up and see what happens. First of all, let's say I have an American-made car. American car. That's, let's say, 6 cylinders, engine displacement. Let's find a kind of a good engine displacement. Looks like we have a range. So we get like a 200 engine displacement. Horsepower could be, let's say, 100. Weight could be, let's say, 2,500. Accelerate could be, let's say, 15 seconds. Year, let's say, 1975. And then this is the part I wanted to get practice. So this is an American car. So what do we put under these two variables? Well, if it's an American car, then it's 0, 0, right? So let's put this right here. This is an American car. Let's do some practice here. Japanese car and European car. Oops. European car. And let's just sort of have the same for all these three cars except for the last ones, right? So if a Japanese car, then it's 1, 0. If it's a European car, it's 0, 1, right? So now we can find the y-hats of these guys. Right, so the predicted value of this car that we made up. So notice the only thing that's different here is the origin. Everything else is held constant, right? Everything else is the same. So we know how to do this. So we just say, well, here's our intercept. I'm going to lock that in. Intercept plus the sum product of this array, comma, this array. And that array I'm going to lock it in, hit F4. Alright, so if it's an American car, it gets 24 miles per gallon. That's pretty good. If a Japanese car gets 27 miles per gallon. And if it's a European car, it gets 27 miles per gallon. So this is what I want to do. I want to find the difference between these two and these two. So let's just do that. So this one minus this one. And let's do it again. This one minus this one. Let's see, I did this wrong. This one minus this one. Alright, so if it's a Japanese car, it's 2.85 miles per gallon better. If it's a European, it's 2.63 miles per gallon. So that numbers are exactly the same as these coefficients, right? So that's what's going on. So that's what these coefficients tell us, right? So these coefficients can also tell us, so the p-value of these coefficients is interesting. If we have a theory that says, well, I think that Japanese cars are just have better gas mileage, I can set up this whole model, right, to test that theory. So, and then in order to actually have a hypothesis test, all we do is look at this p-value and say, yeah, Japanese cars are significantly better, improved, so significantly different, but we could say better because this is a positive number. Significantly better than American cars. Yeah, this is a really low p-value. For that matter, European cars are as well. Right? So that's what these p-values could tell us when we have a dummy variable, is that one thing is better than the other. Okay, so that's that for this one.